several things going in to a large volume parental, and monoclonal was going in after that from its own infusion bag. So historically, this would be a large volume of stuff going in with as simple calculations to determine whether that was going to be too much. But the fact that it appears to be too much from a powering perspective shows a contrast in the historic versus the current biological testing philosophy. We can see in BLA responses that regulatory agencies are expecting these specifications to be brought down below the tolerance limit calculation. I can't remember the last time I saw a biologics specification that was around the calculated tolerance limit. Even as per the Q&A guideline, it says that the routine test should be just above the level that neutralizes interference. So this is not a MVD calculation. This is more of a question of how low can you test this. So I think in some respects the IIRMI view may already be taking hold in terms of regulators wanting to see BET testing done at very low levels. The idea of the tolerance limit, which is a pyrogen-based, of course, according to USP 85 concept, and I'm not suggesting it's been thrown out, but I'm just suggesting that it's really not used in the context that it was historically. Now the question becomes how far below the tolerance limit are we expected to test for a given biologic? So in summary, I can say from being at the PDA this week, LER continues to polarize industry participants with a good split on how to proceed, somewhat split between demasking and users that want to see an NOE substituted for the CSE for whole type studies. We've also seen here that whole time studies for BLA submissions have been defined by the FDA. We looked a little bit at that. What I've not shown here is demasking data, which is available, and if you email scientific support, we can send a copy of the poster I showed at the PDA yesterday. This is developmental, but you can see from the data that it's coming along well. We continue to try to develop it because we can't stop and see which way the event's going to go and really get the work done. So we're going forward with the demasking development, and then of course we will await the industry's consensus on how regulators and users want to proceed with the issues. Finally, in the last section, I talked about an emerging view that's contrasting the historic pyrogen view. I bring this up not to add confusion to an already confusing subject, but really to try to show that detoxification could encompass LER and could form a backdrop for how we view it, not as a single tree, but as a forest of things that are out there. It is an emerging view, and no one has really come up with yet how to deal with it. So it's emerging. It's not without a strong foundation as having come from the FDA laboratories. And I believe all this eventually will lead therapeutic product manufacturers to want to be able to see endotoxin even in its monomeric form in order to gain control over the manufacturing process. So I see this as an evolution that is inevitable. That's just an opinion. But it's an interesting subject, and it makes for interesting times for us, I think. So I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope we have a few questions. So I'll turn it over to Ingo.
Thanks, Kevin, for this comprehensive presentation. There's a little bit of time, so there is plenty of time for questions. So feel free to take questions by the question pane in the photo on your screen. You can also by clicking on the red button with the right arrow in case you've never used it. So feel free to send any questions that come up to your line. So one question we already have is, I think two conferences with LER, where LER is discussed, I didn't say there have been no feeder episodes. So how can LER be harmful?
Yeah, I've heard that argument, and I've heard it again this week at the PDA in Bethesda. But I think people are not aware of the typical response that you see with many monoclonal antibodies, and that is a fever response that is of really unknown origin. So if you look at these package inserts, it's very common to see a fever response upon the initial dosing of a monoclonal or other therapeutic protein. So it would be very difficult to say there's no pyrogenic responses because it's endemic in the whole process. So what they should rather say is there's no really widespread fever that can be attributed exactly to contaminants. So this is some of the view that the IIRMI theory fits in with as wanting to gain control over these kinds of concepts that better differentiate between what would be pyrogen from a contaminant or what might be some other response based on an immunological response.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I have another question from a attendee who said he heard that people say LER is only problem of purified endotoxin, not natural endotoxin. So why do they say this?
Well, that's yes, we hear that at the conferences. and we're still hearing the difference there. What Lonza showed and some others have also showed is that when you make these NOE solutions and compare the LER effects, you can see that depending on the organism you've chosen, LER actually does occur with many NOEs. So I think they're referring to select NOEs that they've found that are not affected by the phenomenon. But the issue I have with that is that you don't know what your contaminants will be. You don't know what they'll be a mixture of. So the fact that many NOEs do produce or do succumb to the LER effect makes me think that it's not just a phenomenon of purified lipopolysaccharide, although I think the purified is more affected. So the NOE is affected, but the purified is more affected.
Okay, thank you. And here's a more practical related question. It's about LER recovery. Question is it measured against the same product matrix as T0 or against spiked LRW?
The way I've seen it performed is it's measured against the control. And I'm thinking of that slide, I should have mentioned the simultaneous spiking of the water control. Because it was mentioned that some people had poor water recovery, so that led them to think there was a different issue with their spiking in the tartar. So I've heard both ways. If you get 90% back in water, then you should only expect 90% back, but really your overcoming of LER shouldn't be so picky as to need that extra residual amount. But I've seen users doing it both ways, and I don't think anybody has said either way is unacceptable.
Okay, next question is there evidence of immune activity being formed against small molecule medicine when it was repeatedly injected with low reduction concentration, or is only observed with biologicals?
Well, I think the theory is only with biologicals because of that so-called adjuvant effect. I've not seen literature specific to the formation of anti-drug antibodies to non-biologics. I may just not be aware of it, but I think the problem with the smaller drug molecules are usually a different kind of problem based on either their potency or their mechanism of action. But I don't believe the body forms the same kind of antibodies against the smaller molecules that are not of biologic origin.
Okay, and the related question would be, does LER only affect biologics, and are those studies required for non-biologic manufacturers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've only heard users say that FDA was questioning them about a non-biologic, but I do know from yesterday's FDA talk that even for biologics that are legacy biologics, they're not yet going back to ask the LER questions. So this would lead me to believe that if they're not doing it for legacy biologics, then really they shouldn't be doing it for non-biologics. Although I have heard users say, FDA, this product contains polysorbate, FDA is asking us about LER, so it's probably a case in which one inspector is informed differently than another, but in general I would not expect to see that. So I don't have a great answer for that. Just more or less based on just hearing what users are saying.
Yeah, thank you. And another question more related to regulation is, what is the current regulatory standing on use of naturally occurring inhibitors for LER studies?
Yeah, we do know to answer that in an up-to-date manner because Patricia Hughes, who approves VLAs in the U.S., said yesterday in her talk that she was not going to address NOEs because she was not encouraging or accepting their use at this time. So I don't think the idea of the NOE is dead. I think there's still participants that want to go that route, but it's going to take some convincing as to whether or not users can get together and form some consensus on what would be used in that manner. So Lonza is pursuing the demasking protocol in order to go that direction should it be decided that that's what's needed. But also Lonza has made an NOE that we've used as well for some of these kinds of studies. But at this moment, the FDA is not looking at NOEs because my impression was there's enough confounding information without their wanting to inject that into their approval process.
Thank you. And I think there's a question which relates and fits quite well. Has there been any success with demasking protocols and other regulatory authorities keen on this type of investigation?
Yes, I would encourage anyone out there that's interested in demasking to request of our scientific support the poster that we have containing some developmental data. So this data looks good. It was performed on a monoclonal, a developmental monoclonal, and it was performed using a couple of different lots of LEL and CSE. And the demasking protocol here uses some short chemical treatments to unlock the monomers from the polysorbate and to allow them to reaggregate, and then it uses a clear plate to bind the released endotoxin to the plate. The plate is washed off, and then LAL can be added. So we've had some success with this method, even though it's still developmental. And I believe the FDA has supported this route based on their comments and based on some of the comments at the PMF, where the inspector that was present was asking about some participants that had not tried demasking, was asking them to try that as an option. So I know the FDA is asking for follow-up methods in the BLA approval. So I think this is what they're looking for at this moment, but of course that could change.
Okay, thank you. And I think one more question we can answer that, which also fits to that. It's again more practical related. Can this AR is observed? Is there anything that can be added to overcome the AR group testing with any recommendation?
Well, that's the demasking protocol, in which the phenomenon is basically reversed. If you remember that picture of the disaggregation of the blue aggregates becoming surrounded by the red surfactant molecules, then the demasking is really just the removal of the polysorbate molecules, such that the blue aggregates can reform. So you're not adding or subtracting endotoxin from the solution there once it's been added as a spike, and you'll know, stoichiometrically, if you get back the right amount based on your theory. So we have had some success in doing that. Some people think, well, it's been taken apart, why would you put it back together? But really the act of putting it back together is all that can allow us really to test it in the LAL test. So I don't see it as incongruent to put it back together in order to gauge how much of it is there. So that's some progress that we're working towards.
Again, thank you, Kevin, for all the information. We've now reached the end of the webinar, so thanks again all for the presentation. And
thank you all for listening.
Another question we just did answer, and right now you will get an email written response within the next 2 to 3 working days, so we will work on getting another question. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thank you. Have a good day. Hello everyone, this is Sean First. I'm your moderator for today's webinar, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce Travis Wallace, who is our speaker for today. So Travis, if you're ready, please we can go ahead and begin now. Thank you, Sean. Yeah. Testing medical devices for endotoxin is very common, and the thought of doing so can seem a bit frightening. But does it need to be frightening? Do you ever feel overwhelmed when determining the ERL for a device? Are you certain that you understand the regulatory aspect of testing medical devices? My name is Travis Wallace. I'm a scientific support specialist for Plaza, and I'll be your speaker for today. Also helping with some behind-the-scenes technical aspects. And he introduced himself already, is scientific support specialist Sean First. During the next 45 minutes or so, I will cover the topics you see on the agenda on your screen. Questions can be submitted at any time, and they will be answered at the end of the presentation during a live Q&A session. For any questions that we do not have the opportunity to answer, you will receive a written response within the next 2 to 3 days. I should also mention that everyone who registered for today's webinar will be receiving a PDF copy as well. The webinar will also be archived on our website for future viewing to revisit any of the topics discussed today. If you encounter any technical problems, please click on the link provided in the questions pane of the control panel on your screen. Here you will find the dial-in information from our web host, and he will assist you in resolving the issue. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will be sent a feedback form, and we would greatly appreciate if you could take a few moments to complete this form, as your feedback is very important to us. Please note that while providing your ratings, 5 is the best, and 1 is the least. Let's lead off with the regulatory aspects of medical device testing. The regulations for the United States and Europe differ regarding final release testing of medical devices. In the U.S., the FDA enforces USP Chapter 161, while in Europe, the final release testing is less well-defined and is a risk assessment-based system. Resources that can be referenced are the USP Chapter 161, the ANSI, AAMI, or ANI, and the individual LAL vendors' information sheets. The principle for testing medical devices is that the device is washed or rinsed with an extraction solution. Thus, the sample that is tested for endotoxin is the extracting solution itself. This principle is followed in both the United States and Europe,